Well, thanks everybody for joining. We're going to go ahead and get started here. So my name is Jake Jansen. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Lava. So we're the host of this webinar today. Super excited to bring these three amazing leaders in IT to you to give you some tips and inside secrets. Just a quick about Lava. We're 5 years in, headquartered in Northern Virginia. We're an Inc. 5000 technology advisory firm. We focus on the Fortune 1000. I've had the privilege of working with Christie for many, many years. And, we are super excited to bring this to the table today and kind of kick this off. So without further ado, I do want to introduce our host and our panelists today. So we have Christie Nader. Christie is the CIO for Jet Aviation. We have Lisa Rogers, the CIO and VP of MTSI. And we have Eric Firer, who's the CIO of Kellanova. And Christie's going to be the host today. And so I'm probably not going to say much else after that. But Christie, if you'd like to introduce yourself and then kind of go around and do a little bit more formal intro of your peers on the call today, and then we can kind of get rolling. For real quick on the housekeeping, sorry. For anybody that has a question, you're able to ask questions in the Q&A. I will answer them or have Christie and team answer them throughout or at the end. But please feel free to ask any questions or raise your hand. Or actually, don't raise your hand. Just put your question in the Q&A and I will get to it. Okay, cool. Go ahead, Christie.
Awesome. Perfect. Thanks, Jake. I'm glad to be here and super excited to moderate this webinar. The topic is huge, and I've had so many friends reach out and say they're just about to start a new role. So they're very excited about learning all this. So I'm Christie Nader, and I am the CIO at Jet Aviation. I've been with Jet it'll be 4 years this summer. And we do private and business aviation globally in 50 locations around the world, headquartered in Switzerland. And prior to Jet, I worked in government contracting technology services. Before that, I was in healthcare. Before that, financial services. Before that, higher education. So I come in with a whole variety of experience with different industries and different types of companies. And my last three roles, I was brought in specifically to affect change. So the beginning of the first 90 days of the CIO role is definitely very critical. And so even during my interview process, I shared here's what I would see my initial 90 days look like. And it's very important for our role and for the company as a whole. So anyways, that's a little bit about my background. Why don't I pass it to Lisa? Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we can hit Eric.
Awesome. Thanks, Christie. And thank you, Jake, for inviting us here today. Happy to be here and represent. I am the CIO for Modern Technology Solutions, Inc., or MTSI for short. And our company is, one of the cool things about our company is we're 100% employee owned, but we're an engineering firm and technology solutions company that really serves national defense and making sure our nation is safe and secure through innovation and solutions that we provide. So I, like Christie, have a very eclectic background, GovCon, and I was also in a federal civil engineering type firm, so roads and bridges to information technology, all of the big ones around here in Northern Virginia with you, Jake. So some of your neighbors, I'm sure. So really happy to be here. And I am all of 3 months and 16 days into my new role here at MTSI. So I am living the dream that we're about to talk about today. So I'm excited to share. And over to you, Eric.
Thanks so much, Lisa. And thank you, Jake and Christie, for having me here today. Pleasure to be here and looking forward to the discussion. So I am the proud CIO of Kellanova North America. So Kellanova may or may not be a company you've heard of, but I'm pretty sure you've heard of the Kellogg Company. And the Kellogg Company, back in October 2023, split into 2 publicly traded companies, WK Kellogg Co., which is a $3 billion cereal company, and Kellanova, which is a $13-14 billion global snacking, international cereal and frozen food company. So the North America region makes up about 50% of the revenue, 70% of the profitability. You may have heard of some of our iconic brands, Pringles, Cheez-Its, Pop-Tarts, Rice Krispie Treats, Eggo, Morningstar Farms. If you have kids like I do, I'm sure your pantry is full of some of our products. And it's been an absolute pleasure being part of the Kellanova team. Prior to Kellanova, I've worked for also some really incredible companies with incredible brands, including Bacardi, the largest privately held spirit company in the world, Estee Lauder companies, J. Crew, and started my career in consulting with Deloitte. So that's a little bit about me. Looking forward to getting into the discussion.
All right. Well, now I'm hungry. Now I feel like I should be sitting here with a can of Pringles or some Cheez-Its. I mean, who can actually sit there with a bag of Cheez-Its and not just constantly anyways, all right. So as you see, we have some great brains on this call. And so over the next 6 hours, we're gonna cover a few topics. So what I'm gonna do is, so I'm gonna dive in, like Jake mentioned, we'd love to get questions from people who joined in. But I have a handful of questions. So I'm gonna dive in and sort of ping pong a little bit. And so let me start with the first question that I have. And it's a little bit high level and generic, but I think it's interesting to see the different perspectives. So the first question I have is, what are the top priorities for a CIO in your first 90 days? So let me start with Lisa. Lisa, if you can jump in and kind of give your perspective, sure. Top priorities, first 90 days, and then we'll have Eric come in from his side.
Yeah, so I'm going to start with a non-engineering answer. And for me, like the number one thing that you must do is build trust. And that trust is not only with your own team, but with your peers and across the organization, because you're coming in, and it can be scary for your team, and also for the organization, like what's coming in here and what's going to change, and is anybody going to be moving my cheese, and or excited, like what can they bring to the table? So, and literally me just being again, just 3 months in, the very first 30 days of that, I think I did 50 interviews here at MTSI, and really just getting to know people. And also by doing that, you learn about the business and you learn about the opportunities that you'll have, the low hanging fruit. But for me, I just wanted to start off with, it's actually a non-engineering answer. It's all about building trust.
Great. Eric?
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things I often talk about is that the role of the CIO has evolved so much. But we're in the people game. I know what we do is technology, but at the end of the day, we're in the people game. We're in the people game to develop our teams, to create really, really strong relationships. And part of kind of coming into a new situation is being really thoughtful and really prescriptive about building those relationships. I think, part of it is also getting a chance to understand your business. So for me, working in a food production company like Kellanova, or even a spirits company like Bacardi, one of the first things I did is take the opportunity to actually go visit where we make the food or where we make the drinks. So I know I visited 4 production sites. So I got to see live us make Pop-Tarts right off the line, Rice Krispie Treats, and it was fantastic. And when I was with Bacardi, I did something similar. So really get to understand how it all comes together, how your business operates. So I think that's part of it. Another one is you do want to also get to know your team. So Lisa was right about building the relationships cross-functionally. That's a must. You have to do that. But as it relates to the IT organization, she mentioned something really important: the who moved my cheese, and what's going to change. Even though we have a big agenda coming in, I think the organization, the technology organization, could be very nervous about a new leader coming in. Well, what does it mean for me? So it's really important for you to come in and show your human side. So whether that's to have a town hall and be able to break the ice, right? Share a little bit about you that maybe they wouldn't have seen from LinkedIn or from the announcement, right? For me, I love to talk about my family, kind of break open with that. But then I talk a little bit about how I'm a lifelong New York Jets fan. And then people start to have a little sympathy and say, oh my gosh, he likes the New York Jets. He must be okay because he's used to a life of sadness and misery. So show that human side. And I feel like that opens things up for your team to feel comfortable, right, with who you are. And then, you can start getting into really building those relationships and trust, as Lisa mentioned.
Yeah, and I just want to foot stomp on one of the things that Eric said, and that was around making the rounds and getting to know people. I was very blessed that our organization was doing the corporate town halls within the first month or two that I was there, so I was able to get out and about and see like S16s like torn open because we're putting individual new modules in there and doing test flights. Super cool to get to see. I've been a software developer, in IT my whole life, but to see something like fighter jets was new to me. So, and it gives you that emotional as a leader connection to the mission of what your organization's doing in a way that you can't get if you just stay behind your desk. So yeah, we just wanted to foot stomp that a little bit.
And Lisa,
all,
I think.
Go ahead.
Sorry, no. Go ahead. You finish.
No, I was just going to say the other piece about when you're meeting with your team and also with the peers. I will tell you, like, I had 4 questions, and the first one I started off with was, tell me your story. Tell me your story. And then I sit and listen, because from that's where when people are talking about themselves and where they want to take that is wherever it goes, which is wonderful. And then, then tell me, what's sacred here, what shouldn't, in your mind, what shouldn't be changed. And then if you had a magic wand and you could do something different, how would you use that magic wand? And then lastly, who else should I talk to? Like, who's not on the org chart that would be important for me to know? So those are like my 4 key questions in that interview that hopefully, if that's helpful to others. But starting off with, tell me your story. That's when you get to know people personally, and then you understand, like you said, learning about people's families and what they do for fun and things like that. Go ahead, Eric.
Agree. No. I think that's perfect. I think I just wanted to, you said something about, not just sitting behind the desk. And I think that's the beauty of the first 90 days is, your calendar's not booked yet, right? So you have that ability to go visit the sites or go see how the business works or have those town halls or have those one-on-ones. So, that's something to really invest your time in. And obviously really important to start building that out with your business partners too, right? And, hitting the ground running, having kind of similar questions with them too. So I love that.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because when you talk with people in CIO roles, you don't hear us talking about the technology and the widgets. And so wait, so how many data centers do we have? What version X, whatever. You don't hear that. And the advice that I give to people as I mentor them as they move into management roles, I was just talking with somebody on my team about this the other day and explained, hey, you want this management role. I just want you to understand that a big percentage of your life now is building relationships. And especially because, as we do come in and start making change, that you want those relationships. That relationship equity goes really far when shit breaks, and then you're able to have those conversations and with the relationships that you've already built, and it's so important within your own team and across the company. And again, in that visibility, and absolutely, you're 100%. Your calendar is not full of meetings at that point. So take that time. 2 roles ago, I worked in a healthcare company where we provided healthcare into correctional facilities. So it was my first month. I was in prison. I was in the prison,
literally
meeting with our nurses and people on site that were doing this to understand, and it was truly eye-opening because supporting users in that environment was vastly different than I had ever dealt with before. And I just like saying that I was in prison. That's always that's an icebreaker. Yeah, dinner parties. Um, so let me look at my questions. So we actually, we already answered my second question. So look at us, we're doing great. So here's a good question. So when you start actually diving in and hearing about the challenges and seeing some pieces of the technology and the organization and what's happening in the goals, obviously you're going to come in, we talk to people and they have these huge goals. Here's where we want to be. And then you also get this list of here's everything that's broken. Here's the mess. So how do you balance kind of getting some of those quick wins and compared to the longer term? What does that look like? Because obviously people want all the stuff done quickly, and you're coming in, you have all this pressure. So how do you balance that? And what's sort of your go-to with figuring out what do I dive into first to find those quick wins compared to the longer term? So I'll start with Eric on this one.
Great question. So, in the context of the first 90 days, I think it's really, really hard to really make seismic changes to long-term strategy or even come up with a long-term strategy. I think, my advice to, whether it's new leaders, new CIOs, in those first 90 days, you definitely want to do more listening than changing. Not to say that there's not going to be quick wins or opportunities, and those should be evaluated, right? And you want to be able to share guidance with your team, but don't be so quick to make seismic changes. I think it's really important to understand what's happening, right? What the current state is, what some of the current initiatives are, what the current strategy is, right? Do that listening. And then as you're kind of going on that 90-day world tour and building out those relationships with your business partners, right? I love the magic wand, by the way, Lisa. I use that too. So that is an awesome technique when you're getting to know not only your team, but I've used that in intro meetings with my business partners too. It's, hey, number one, what's your overall impression of the IT function, the digital function? Are they adding value for you? Do you feel like they're strategic partners? If you had a magic wand, what are some of the things you would want us to be doing more? So you're really kind of trying to take different bits of the story, and then again, you're not putting any judgment on your own team for what they are doing well or not doing well, but it's a piece of it, right? You get to learn the sentiments. You get to learn maybe who some of those potential really strong advocates and partners are going to be in the business, and you kind of build the story with your own team, right, of kind of what they're working on, and seeing, is there a disconnect, or actually, what, we're right there, providing some of that thought leadership. This is really great in this pocket. Great. Here's maybe an area I'm going to want to think about investing more time in because we're not doing that. So long story short, again, maybe I didn't answer the question directly about long-term strategy, but it was more about do the listening. I think if you get all of those inputs correctly, then when it's time to put together your first long-term strategy, it'll be much more aligned and in sync with where the company needs to go than if you try to just do it out of the gate with limited information.
Yeah, I'll add on to that. I will say it's so important when you're actually capturing all those magic wand moments that there's going to be a quick win, low-hanging fruit. There's going to be something that you can do where you get to be Santa Claus, which I love being. I love giving out presents and gifts and capabilities maybe we're ready to go but didn't quite get there, or looking at something at a different angle that gives people some liberty where they might have had their hands tied before. So I always look for that when it comes to the quick wins, and again, they're given to you. So if you are doing that first 30 days listening and the magic wand, and I would say 80% of it usually comes from my team, and the other 20% from the business owners. Your team is actually one of the best resources that you can have of finding out what those quick wins are. And as far as strategic goals, I will say you are spot on, Eric. Like, it's important not to rush into that too quickly. But believe me, there's a desire, or there's a knock at my door. Like, when are we going to see the plan? When are we going to see the plan? But one of the things I like to do is kind of test my hunches, which is what I'm doing right now at MTSI. Like, kind of like drop this and let it stir and see how an idea meshes with the culture and meshes with the leaders and meshes with the organization. What kind of, resistance or attraction you get to those long-term ideas, to make sure that when you do get them down in writing and you do start evangelizing them, that you know where you're going to have to do a lot of change management, or where you're going to be able to, again, have some more quick wins. Because at the end of the day, there's that spectrum of the quick wins and the long-term strategic goal. The quick wins start to get the flywheel going. Well, what you don't want to have is a drop off and then nothing happens for a year, and nothing happens for 2 years. So there's that kind of what happens in the middle that you've got to measure through that evaluation of the bigger things. Like, we know we're going to go to California. We know we're going west, but we might not know if we're going to take a northern route, a southern route, a train, a plane, a bicycle. We're going to be hiking. We don't necessarily know how, but if you can give people that vision of, here's California, and I'm going to try out, what do you think about a tandem bike? What do you think about, a jet, and then start to get some of that sense of how the organization is going to respond to what you want to do. But it's really, really hard, and I'm feeling it right now, to I so much want to give hardcore answers, and people want me to give them. But it's that patience, that professional patience that I would caution as much as you can, to set expectations, so that you don't bluster into something that's going to really derail you.
Yeah. And I think that when it comes to the quick wins, well, I think in general, we need to highlight the wins and make sure we're communicating and sharing with people what we're doing. So we get the kudos for it, right? So people see what's going on. And definitely one of the things I've experienced is when you start highlighting some of these quick wins with, hey, and I'll give an example. I have in my current company, I hired on a new director of end user experience. And so he's been interviewing people and going through all sorts of things. And so now we sort of have this mini campaign of, you spoke and we listened. And so we're sharing, and here's what we've changed directly based off of what you have said and asked for. So I think that it's also really good to, when you can have some of those quick wins, to make sure that you're advertising that. And then people are seeing it. I know in IT, where sometimes we're horrible at celebrating things, where we see all the things that we still have to do. And you see that huge list, and you see the things that are still broken and wrong. And so you get something to do and you're like, check, and you keep moving and you keep running. And I know I have to get better at this as well, but we need to celebrate and advertise our wins. So it's seen, and plus then, and the teams love that. They don't always get the acknowledgement when you're sort of that man behind the curtain, doing things and people don't know what you're doing.
Christy, it's okay if we go off script for just a second. One of the things you said was so important, especially in the first, one of the things you absolutely can evaluate, you should evaluate, and I'm not talking people, process, technology. I'm actually talking, what is the communication? And this is what you said, sparked what are the communication methodologies that are in place, that are working? Are they using town halls? Are they using a newsletter? Are they using the intranet? Are they, what works? What are they used to? And what can you, if you could do something innovative and new around communication as one of your quick wins, that's like a double stamp. So I know I'm going to be doing that. We're about to roll out 2 different things that IT hasn't done here in this organization before. So I'm excited to do that. So I just want to, what you said, that just popped that in my head. I want to make sure that we didn't lose that. I know
think
what
that's
you think,
great.
Eric.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think, one of the goals for any new CIO or even existing CIO is to create a winning culture, right? And, part of that winning culture is certainly around the rewards and recognition. I'm not talking about just your regular salary. I'm talking about
Right.
that, how do you recognize great, work? How do you recognize people who go above and beyond? And, sometimes those type of communication mechanisms exist, and you can jump onto them.
Right.
Certain town halls at Kellanova, we have something, we call it Rock IT. And this was started by Leslie Salmon, who is our amazing global CIO. And, literally we infuse rock or music into our town halls, and we make sure that that's a big element, right? And as part of it, we absolutely are spotlighting, great work or, different initiatives that are happening around the company. But that resonated with me, right? Because that's a little fun.
I am so
and-
stealing that. I am so
Well,
stealing that idea. I love
Leslie
it.
gets the kudos for me. I'm just riding the train. But the, again, the point is that's something that you can take and you can run with. But if not, because kind of in addition to that, I wanted to make sure we were having our own town halls in North America that were differentiated, spotlighting certain things that we're doing specifically in North America, and kind of making sure that it was part of the total package. So, it is so important, because that's how you make sure the IT organization feels connected and feels part of something bigger than just their 9 to 5 or their day to day, right? And that's ultimately what we aspire to do, right? Is create that high performing team.
Yep, exactly. And I'll add one other piece into this, is, when you join a company, it's building those relationships. And then if nowadays companies are expanding so much, whether it's within the US, globally, whatever, and not everybody's in the same office. You can't always just randomly run into team members in the break room and just have those water cooler chats, right? We don't have that. My company, we have 50 locations, and my IT team is in 7 locations around the globe. We're across like 14 time zones, and it's difficult. And some of the feedback that I got from my own team was, that they don't know each other as well. I mean, how can they, right? And so then it's these structured team calls. Well, when you're on Teams, it's structured, or again, somebody's online, the other person, it's the middle of the night for them. So I created these twice a month. I call it Slow Up with Christie. And I send out, and I do 2 of them so I can cross different time zones, like 10 o'clock at night, my time on the East Coast in the US. I'll send it out. I send it out to my whole team, and it's not, they're not obligated to join. There's no agenda. It's just, let's just hang out for a little bit, chat, catch up, meet different people. And it's enabled me to get to know my team members more. And then the different people that join on, I'll have team members from the Philippines, from Singapore, from Sydney, from, New Jersey, like all on the same call. And then they're meeting each other. And we've been trying to create some of these situations where, even though we're not physically co-located, trying to create a little bit more of that, so we can chat, we can laugh, and some of the topics on those calls just get to the most bizarre things, which is hilarious. So I try not to make it work related, so we're just talking and catching up. And especially culturally, it's really cool. We get all sorts of different people on the call with all sorts of different experiences, and it helps build that as well.
Christie, I have a question that was asked by Oscar Romalo, and it kind of, I think you touched a little bit of this, which has to do with achieving quick wins. But his question is, how do you balance the learning your organization thoroughly while also trying to deliver the quick results that the C-levels are expecting of you as a new CIO? So there's the time that it takes to learn what's going on, while also trying to give those quick wins. And then kind of the wrap of the question was, how do you approach or what approach do you use to measure that? So, how are you able to spend the time to learn everything you need to learn, while also like throwing some wins at the executives that are, waiting for you to get back to them?
Yeah. So Eric or Lisa,
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. So good question, Oscar. And it's a little bit of an art, not necessarily a science, but don't take your eye off the prize, right? Those first 90 days, it's all about you immersing yourself in your new situation, in your new company, and investing the time to build the relationships, to go on these site tours, to meet your team, to invest in building those relationships both with your business partners and with your team is absolutely going to pay so many dividends past the 90 days that stay focused on that. That doesn't mean that when there are quick win opportunities, not to evaluate them, right? As part of the wish list, yeah, again, I think Lisa did an awesome job talking about kind of where the source of some of those come from. And I would agree, a lot of them come from the team. And maybe some of these ideas were sat on for a long time for various reasons. And, to me, the way I evaluate those quick wins, or at least coach my team to evaluate them, is the value that they're driving, right? So it might be a quick win, but is it still something that we want to go after because it's going to move the needle for something that matters, right? And it's going to drive value for things that matter. Because then it's much easier as a new CIO to say, hey, we're still in learning mode. We're still, I'm still building all the relationships, doing all the right things. But by the way, did you know that we can save this amount of productivity if we go after this? So we're going to do it, or we're going to drive this much more top line growth because we're going to switch the innovation process and shorten it by this amount of time by going after this quick win. So if you're able to do that, and your quick wins actually are quick, but they drive value, to me, it's a home run. But what you have to be careful of is don't agree to every quick win, because you don't know what is the consequence of going after that quick win. What else that might be in flight that maybe you just don't have the full picture of is going to get impacted because you say, you know what, this sounds like a good idea, just go after it. But you know what, there's this other initiative that's been going on for a year and a half, and it's the same resources. So long story short, that would be my advice. Keep your eye on the prize with investing that time for yourself, but still evaluate those quick wins. And if there are ones that you can go after that drive the value, that you can really showcase, this is what we can do as a function, then that's how you balance it.
Yeah, I think that's great, Eric. And I would also add, rely on your own experience. So you're coming into a CIO role, assume with some technology background. You already know what a good unified communication system should be doing, what a good intranet should be doing, what a good file management, data management, ecosystem should look like. So you already know these things. You know what shadow IT looks like. You know what, so you're going to know some basic things before you even start peeling back the onion. And when they represent themselves, have the confidence of your experience to know what is low risk, again, a quick win that is going to add value, like Eric said, and then you can measure that. That was the other part of the question. You can measure that. Often it's a cost savings. I mean, often you're getting rid of licenses, or you're trimming down something that's going to actually be liberating at the end of the day. So and then that gives you wiggle room, those cost savings to do something even more fun, and you get to be Santa Claus again later by giving a capability that, the organization is, desiring and needs. So that's what I would add on to that answer.
yeah. And I think what's interesting is balancing that. I think it throughout, not even just the beginning of the CIO role, but over time, we all in many organizations where you're brought in to affect change, to transform. But frequently you get in these situations, and what do you find? You find that we don't even have a solid foundation. Frequently there's a lot of legacy, technical debt, all these sort of things. And the company's like, hey, we want to be here and we want to drive revenue and do this great stuff, which is fantastic, right? But in order to do that, like, there's some foundational stuff that I always say, I'm like, the stuff that's not sexy that we have to do. and to be able to do the sexy stuff. And you can't wait until all the foundational stuff is done to then start doing, you know, things that are way more transformational. You just can't. Companies can't wait that long. We will not be competitive if we do that, right? And so I always talk about building the plane while flying it, which I've done now in 3 different companies where, and it can be painful because, especially for our own internal IT staff, where they just want to get things done and get the foundation solid, but we have to do these other things, and we never have enough time, money, and resources. Nobody ever does, right? We never have enough to do everything that we truly want to do to drive the business. So that's where the trade-offs come. And so there's also, we could probably have a whole other hour session on balancing that the legacy, the technical debt, you know, how do we do that with the transformational work? But that's another conversation with looking at how you invest your time and money. And that's where those relationships come back in, because you can look at the people and say, hey, by the way, some of this legacy stuff, like, it's not going to get as much loving. I have to use my resources to do this cooler stuff that's going to drive things in a different way. So, you know, just bear with us. This is how this is going to be in order for us to get here, because we can't. So there's a lot of that. I think those trade-offs is something you just deal with constantly in the beginning and then all throughout, you know, the career as a CIO. So let me jump in and ask another question. So as we're looking at evaluating team members and skills and what we have, and notice we still haven't talked about evaluating technology at all. This kind of feeds into it maybe a little bit, but so how do you truly, you know, come into a team? You don't know the people. You might have, you know, layers of managers and different people, and you don't know at this point who you can really trust. You know, where people, where they lie with their thoughts on you coming in and their history and all this. While doing that, you have to try and assess people. You have to try and assess the skills that are in the organization, so you can understand where those gaps are. So how do you go in and actually correctly assess the people and the skills, and then obviously once you get that, then it's easier to assess the technology when you understand the skill set of the people that you have. But how do you do that? And wait, did I start with Eric last time? Let me start with Lisa. I'm trying to remember.
Flip a coin.
So how do you do that? How do you read through the mess and the smoke and mirrors that some people might throw up? So Lisa, do you want to jump in that?
And they will. So I'm not talking about my current role now, but a previous one where you know, I came in, and I will say another tricky part was there were more than one, less than 5 people who wanted my role before I came in there that were a part of my team. So, and that's very common, right? Either, you know, a heir apparent wasn't quite ready, or all of that. So having those really, you have to get to know people on a very personal level. So, and knowing, you know, how's the job going for you? What do you struggle with? Where are you a rock star? And then you start testing it. I mean, even just this week, something goes wrong, and you send it to a group, and which one picks it up, and which one can respond, which one knows the answer, or even is willing to try, maybe not know the answer. So you can learn a lot through observation of what's happening operationally, but it really starts off with that one-on-one relationship, though, and asking those questions about their career. Tell me about your career story, and how has that evolution gone? And, you know, have they had the same role for 20 years versus somebody who's had progressive changes versus somebody who maybe has gone up and down and around, maybe did something totally different and zoomed back in. So all of that, you can't find that out unless you ask. So having those questions where you have those meaningful conversations, and then you just observe. you test things out, you see things in action, and try not to fall into you might get somebody who's very chatty who wants to tell you how everybody in the team measures up. Well, let me tell you how everybody is, and I'll rack them, stack them for you. Try not to listen to that, but rely on your own instinct and your own observations. But when you have somebody who wanted your role, that's actually a unique opportunity to build loyalty with those folks in a unique way. And you might say, Lisa, how the heck do you handle that? Really having that face-to-face conversation to say, hey, I understand, you applied for this role. Can we talk about, why you're not in the role? Why do you, what's your take on, how you didn't get there? Would you like to be in that role? What can we do were there things that you were deficient in or that you need to grow in or an experience you need? Let's make sure that's part of your growth plan. So right in day one with those individuals, I want to show that I'm going to invest in you so that you can be the CIO one day. And you do that from day one. And then some of the bristly part, you can see it, the hackles starting to go down as the conversation goes. You can see them lean in a little bit more. And that's how you know that you're reaching them and then you got to follow through. So sorry, Eric, that was chatty on that one.
That was perfect. And I'll just give a couple builds. So one of my favorite quotes is, you can't consider yourself a leader until you've created other leaders. I feel really strong about that. And I feel like what you talked about there, Lisa, is so important. Right now, I've been on both sides of the coin throughout my career. There have been times where I've been passed up when I thought I deserved it and didn't get it. And there are times where I got it and maybe somebody who was an incumbent didn't and thought they deserved it. Right. So I think having that experience has been really important because I have a lot of empathy. And, I really feel that it's important to start building that trust. And at the end of the day, helping coach your team, right, in a way that they're going to become high-performing leaders themselves, whether it be for your role or others. So I kind of take a three-prong approach to it. So the first is exactly what you hit on, Lisa, which is have those conversations with your team to understand, kind of what their aspirations are, what their experiences are, what their strengths are. The other thing, kind of second prong is, I definitely spend a lot of time with whoever my HR business partner is and really understand from a data-driven perspective, who are my high potentials? Who are my top talent? Who are maybe some of the talent that are struggling? So I at least can get some perspective, right? Even going in as to who are some of the people I got to keep my eye on, because we're going to need to feed these folks some really, really exciting work and opportunities, or we're going to have to turn the ship around for some of these folks that maybe, are they getting the right mentoring? Are they getting the right coaching? So that's kind of second prong. Third prong for me is spending time with the business partners. And, you can have a situation where it appears based on your conversation, somebody's a rock star, but when you meet with the business partner, they're not cutting the mustard in certain areas. So how do you close that gap, right? And it comes back to, you want to be that coach for your team member, because you're not doing them any service, any help by not addressing that, right? You want to help them along the way and give them that guidance as to how they're going to be that strategic partner and where they need to maybe move their energy. So that's kind of the approach that I take.
I love that,
Yeah.
Eric. And I just want to add on, pull that thread just a little bit more around what you're talking about is taking that feedback.
Yeah.
And when you get that feedback, there's a time and a place that you tell the executive team, here's what I've learned. But there's also a time and place to tell your team, here's what I've learned. And whether it's the good, the bad, the ugly, you want to start off with celebrating, you want to finish with celebrating, do the sandwich for sure.
Yep.
But it's an opportunity for the organization to hold up a mirror to itself, and and then watch how they react to that. Is there a defensive response? Is there a defeatist response? well, we just don't have the resources. We just can't. We'll never win. We'll never, like, what is the response? And so that helps you figure out, how are you going to do that team building? How are you going to do that? What kinds of levels of caretaking and healing or shifting do you need to do?
100% agree.
Yeah, yeah. And I love the concept of, the HR business partners. You're working.
Oh yeah, 100%.
I have lots of HR besties, really.
Oh yeah.
They're amazing. And what's interesting, and I'll bring up, I was given advice many years ago, and it's very solid on the people assessing side of things. And this is going to sound very harsh, but this is the reality, and I'll say it very quickly. I was taught, and it makes sense, that when you come in as a new CIO, you have this existing team, your IT team, and very quickly you're going to learn that about a third of the people, they are on board. They're on board with you're coming on, they see the value, whatever. About a third of the people are sort of this neutral zone, and no matter what happens, they're kind of they'll go along, they're happy, whatever. And then you have a third that are detractors, that they're not happy, they don't like change, maybe they don't like you, maybe they just don't like change, whatever it is. And you have to very quickly figure out who those people are, and quickly, this again, I'm gonna sound really harsh, quickly move to eliminate them, or at least find ways to really significantly change the rules, whatever it is, but you have to really be very aware of that, because they can become this cancer that then impacts the rest of the team as you're trying to create change. And it's, after being in a few companies, it's very clear. And if you take, in almost every organization, you end up with at least one cancerous person. Occasionally you have more. And when you find that you extract them, the entire team just blooms. So do not be afraid of making those difficult decisions, whether it's an individual contributor, manager. My last name is Nader, and many years ago, I got the nickname Darth Nader, and it was because I'm not afraid to make difficult decisions, but I will always explain the why behind it. I'm very transparent, but you cannot be afraid to make those decisions. And when the strong team members see you do that, then you earn respect.
That's awesome. Hey, Christie,
do we have questions coming in?
We do. So we've got like 11 minutes. I've got 6 in here, and there's more coming in. So I want to do a speed round. So maybe like 2 minutes each, and I'll just kind of point it out, because there's a few in here. I think there's one definitely for Christie. So I'll start with Eric. One of the questions is, I believe that organizations need to be change-based organizations that drive change as opposed to reacting to it. What are your thoughts on how to market that culture shift?
Yeah, 100%. But in order to be able to do that, you also have to have the right framework with your business partners. A lot of the change that, as a modern technology organization, you can drive could be really powerful, right? Companies that have an appetite for some type of digital transformation, that may give you a platform to make some seismic business process changes. And I'm all for it, but you can't do it alone. You need big support from your management team and your business partners, because when it comes to change, one of the hardest parts is the actual adoption. And whether or not you're a global function pushing something out to a region, whether or not you're a regional function pushing something out and changing something functionally, if you don't have that right framework to make sure that it can be adopted and accepted and people go through the change curve, then you're going to fail. One of the things that we did really well throughout what we call the spin, which is when we split Kellogg's into the 2 publicly traded companies that it is today, we over communicated. We made sure that we were having regular town halls with the entire company, and we were making sure that they understood what part of the process we're at and what that means to each individual. From a technology perspective, hey, as simple as am I going to get a new laptop if I'm part of this company? Is my sign-on going to change? Is my access to systems going to change? All the way through, functionally, how things are going to be different. And I think if you have that right kind of methodology and partnership in place, you absolutely can be driving a change agenda all the way through.
Awesome. Awesome. This one for Lisa. How do you identify and track your big rocks as you move through your first 6 months or so? Maybe that's big
Well-
rocks as boulders that need to move.
Well, I see them as like, major strategic level stuff. So again, I lean on the team that I've just acquired. That's the first one. Talking your business leaders, of course, your executives, they have the big rocks that they want to do. But also, like when it comes to infrastructure and, technology and process and stuff, your own team, because they've been living in it for the last whatever year. So they actually are quite aware. And so, and having them, just like you would manage anything else, having them, having them planned out, communicating them, making progress, all of that, like you would do anything else that we've talked about today. But how do you find the source of it? The person who hired you probably even talked about it in your interview. I know here at MTSI, I think the interview was like 15 people, and they all had big rocks that they wanted to talk about. So I knew before I came in. Also, I was blessed, and MTSI is blessed to have a very strong CEO who, before I even came on, gave me the strategy, corporate strategy that was in draft form so that I could get a feel for what they're going for. So it's not necessarily something you have to like make up. It's there for you to observe and discover, and it's actually not too hard.
Awesome. All right, I have a question for Christie. Obviously the answer is lava. But aside from lava, what other tips would you have for Oscar, who says, thanks for touching on cost. How do you navigate the paradox of being expected to both reduce IT costs and drive innovation simultaneously, especially with transformative technologies often require significant upfront investments, example, AI, Copilot, shifting licensing impacts with Broadcom, Citrix, et cetera?
Yeah, it's super easy. No, it's so easy, so let me say this. So what it comes down to is a couple of things. So when we come back to the relationship building and transparency, so I will have conversations with my executive team, and I'll be very transparent with here's what we're spending on this. Here's what our budget looks like. Kind of here's the resources that I have. So when it comes to driving innovation, so, I mean, the first thing, Oscar, that you have here is AI. Has anyone heard of AI, by the way? I think it's this hot topic, maybe. I mean, it might be something big someday. So everybody wants to do these things. And my conversations with my executive team is, hey, kind of help me, help you, help me, type of situation where we want to build up the business cases. And in many situations that the innovation can be self-funding. If it's a strong enough business case where it is going to increase revenue, it's going to reduce costs, things like that, then you want to buddy up. You want to have that partner. A business case for doing any initiative should not just be IT led. It should be 100%. You have whoever that partner is in a business line, in one of the functional groups, whoever that is, you want to work with them to develop that business case. And then at the same time, it is conversations on trade-offs where, you can look for opportunities for cost savings. And sometimes it takes a little longer to realize cost savings. If you're in like maybe a 2-year agreement, you get to wait a little bit longer for that to end. You have that. Now, and I will throw out Lava. Lava came in and helped me quickly save 40 to 50% on my telecom costs, and moving to a UCAS solution in the US, and we're still going in our other regions. So yeah, any new CIO, telecom audit. Like, look at that. That is it. Companies ignore that all the time. Nobody reads the invoices. Everybody just pays them. And so when you come in and look at that, you can get some quick savings. And a lot of times it is quick because there's been all sorts of, telecom circuits and lines and everything that are way past the initial contract period. So you can cancel them immediately. But it's definitely it's the partnerships with your peers to build those business cases and have very transparent conversations around, hey, in order for us to use these resources to work on this automation initiative, that has to do with whether it's AI, bots, whatever it is, it's going to take this. So I either pull these people off of this other project to work on this, or if this business case is that strong, can we fund the additional resources to make it happen? But you don't want to make those decisions in a vacuum. When you make those decisions with your peers, it's so much more powerful, and everybody is part of the decision, and everybody then has that full buy-in of, we're making a decision on this trade-off.
Love it. All right, 3 minutes. Eric, so 1 minute answer. What common pitfalls, this is going to be easy to answer in 1 minute. What common pitfalls have you observed new CIOs encountering?
I would say two that come to mind. So number one is trying to change things too quickly, right? Before you have the full story, right? We talked a lot about that. So I don't think I have to drain that. But I think the second, we talked a lot about building the trust with the team. And that's important, and you have to do that. But I think making sure that you prioritize building those business partner relationships. Don't just focus on the internal IT team or technology team. It's important. You have to do it, and you got to start, and you got to build it. But I think if you ignore your business partners, you're headed down a bad road, right? Because you want to hit the ground running with them as fast as you can.
I love that. And that goes right into the next question for Lisa, which is right in line. What are some of the most successful partnerships you have been a part of, and why were they so great?
Wow, gosh. There's been so many. I think we talked earlier about, I call it two butts in the seat, but whenever you're doing some kind of initiative, one butt's mine and one butt's the business partner. So, I've had wonderful relationships with HR, with CFOs, with actually winning business. That's really exciting and fun. There's just been so many, and the door's wide open, and it should be open. So I would say, and foot stomping everything Eric said on the other side, but yeah.
Awesome.
It's all there for the taking.
I love it.
I love it.
This last one I think is directed at Christie, but I will let all of you answer. This is from Sean. What do you do as a new CIO if a vendor takes you to Raisin Cane's for chicken fingers at lunch? So.
I asked for the hot sauce.
There you go.
I want to be. Where's my beer?
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. I saw that come in. I'm like, now I need Pringles and chicken fingers. Like,
Exactly. That's awesome. Well, that's the time today. You guys crushed it. I could sit here and listen to you talk for another hour. It's very insightful on my end, as well as received a lot of really good feedback here. There is a survey that everybody will receive at the end of this. Would love to get your feedback from you of other events and sessions like this, or if there's any questions or whatever we can get answered. We'll have that out to you. And thank you so much for your time, Christie, Lisa, and Eric. You all are rock stars. You're leaders, and it shows. And I think everybody learned a lot today. So I don't know if you guys have any final comments or.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jake and team. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this has been great. And anyone who's attending, find us on LinkedIn. Connect.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Have a great one.
Yep. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.